since we got here.
Okay, I know you love the home, but could it be your worst mistake? Buying a home can be an extremely daunting and stressful task.
All right, that's it.
Trying to find the right home that fits all the criteria in the right neighborhood and everything that you love can certainly come with its challenges. So before we get into it, I would like to know in the comments below, what are the types of homes that you would avoid? Whether you agree with me or not about the houses I'm going to discuss, I would love to hear your feedback. So let's get into it. Without further ado, the first type of home on my list is a 100-plus-year-old heritage home. Now I know I love me a heritage home. They are absolutely beautiful, custom craftsmanship. They say they don't build things like they used to is absolutely true. However, when you buy an old heritage home, it's going to sometimes come with some old technology. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is the electrical. If you have some old knob and tube wiring in the home, that can really be a problem. Now, if the old owner has gone and upgraded the electrical system, when was it upgraded? How was it upgraded? And is it to today's standards and code? Sometimes the upgrade could have been done in the mid 70s, mid 80s. You might have an undersized service for today's electronic demand and need. Now, another one to think about when buying an old heritage home is the plumbing system. A lot of the old homes have this old cast iron pipe or galvanized steel. I have seen pipes that are 3-inch, 4-inch in diameter, and there's a pinhole allowing the water to go through. The reason for that is the old cast iron will just collect all the junk that people wash down their sink drain, and slowly, the pipe diameter gets smaller and smaller until there's a blockage. It is hard to get into some of the areas and replace all the plumbing and piping. It involves removing drywall, taking down ceilings. You got vent stacks that go all the way through the roof line. This can be really extensive to replace all this with a more modern system like ABS. And not only that, you also have your water lines. Now, back in the day, they used to do all our water lines in copper. There's nothing wrong with copper, but over time, things shrink, grow, they move, and what happens is the solder connections on the copper starts to degrade, eventually resulting in a leak. To go through an entire house and replace it all with a more modern system like PEX could cost tens of thousands of dollars. There's another one that can be devastating if you don't do your due diligence before buying the home, and that is asbestos. Now, asbestos can be found in all types of materials, including your ceiling tiles, your sheet good flooring, the pipe insulation around the plumbing, and sometimes even the furnace ducting, the tape that they use in it. There's the drywall compound. There's all sorts of places in a home where asbestos can be found. And rest assured, if you're looking at an old house like that, chances are one, if not all of the materials contains asbestos. Now, asbestos is not a problem until it's disturbed, that I'll admit. But if you plan on doing any renovations to that heritage home or that 100-year-old home, if you want to disturb that pipe or rip up that flooring, you're going to have to get somebody to come in and do a proper remediation on that asbestos before you can start your renovations. This adds up costs that people don't really think about or consider. And the last thing you want to do is start tearing up this stuff when you have your family and other people that you love living in the home, because the asbestos can get airborne and cause all sorts of respiratory issues now and down the road. Okay, so we've covered some of the infrastructure in the home, the plumbing, the electrical, potential asbestos problems. But also when it comes to buying a heritage home, they didn't really care about layout as much. The bedrooms were really massive, which could be an allure for you to buy the home. And sometimes it can be a hindrance. And the reason I say that is if you want a 5 or 6 bedroom home, you're probably going to need a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot home, which is going to cost you a small fortune. It can be hard to find somebody to do work on a heritage home too. If it has old lath and plaster, cove ceilings, other details, it can be really, really challenging to find quality tradespeople that know how to fix these things. You don't find very many tradespeople that do lath and plaster anymore. And if you had to remove a wall or cut something out in a cove ceiling, good luck trying to find somebody that can come and actually match it to the existing. All right, so the next type of home that I would never buy would be a home in a flood zone or tsunami zone. Now, I know you're looking at me because you might be watching this video from somewhere else in the country, but I'm in Victoria, BC, and tsunami zone is a real thing. But for the rest of the country, floodplains and flood zones are also a real challenge. Now, there's the obvious reason when it comes to flood zones and tsunami zones, and that is, well, we don't want our house to flood or wash away. But the one thing that gets overlooked quite often is how much is your insurance going to cost? It might be very expensive to insure that home if it's in a floodplain area. Not to mention, if you actually have an issue where you have to use insurance, so if it floods, then that's going to start raising your rates even more and cost you more money year in and year out to insure the home. So when you're looking for a home, you want to look on your local municipality or city maps and identify where those flood or tsunami zones are so you can ensure that the home you're buying does not fall in one of those areas. Now, I understand there's a certain level of risk when you're buying a certain property. If you want that absolute beautiful waterfront property along the Great Lakes or potentially a waterfront piece in Vancouver, you're going to take that risk. And it kind of is what it is, but you need to understand what you're getting yourself into and be prepared to pay a ton of money for your insurance every year. All right, so we've got heritage homes, we've got flood and tsunami zone homes. Next, I want to cover flipped homes. And I know you're going to look at me and you'll be like, well, what's wrong with a flipped home? It's been all fixed up, it's all renovated, it's all new, there shouldn't be any issues. Well, pause for a second, because sometimes flipped homes, and I'm not saying all the time, but not everybody has the same quality of workmanship, and some don't even want to deal with permits. So when you're buying a home that you know has been flipped because it's for sale by, let's say, a corporation or a business entity, you might want to look into, has there been permits taken out? Was the work completed? Do they have sign off and occupancy for the things that they've done? And even ask the seller if they have any photos of the work that's been done so you can have a look at it. Now, you might not be qualified to look through those photos because you don't know much about construction, but you could even forward those to your home inspector and they could take a look and go, okay, for a good point of reference of what's been done to the home. Don't just assume because it's renovated that it's all brand new and you're not going to have any issues. I'm a firm believer that when you do a construction project, right from the first guy that tears off the first board to the last bit of paint and drywall that goes up, everybody needs to do a fantastic job. So some little key things that you can look for when you're looking at a home that you know has been renovated and is being flipped. How's the condition of the drywall? How's the condition of the fit and finish? Because if the trim is all crooked or the paint looks horrible, you can only imagine what it looks like behind the walls where you can't see it and where they cut corners to save some money on the renovation. I personally would not buy a flipped home, but if you're willing to take the risk, what I compare it to is actually a salvage title on a car. So if a car has been written off and then repaired and put back together, would you buy it or would you pass on it? Me personally, that's the reason we have Carfax, and I'm not going to buy a car that's been twisted around a tree or a pole and somebody straighten it back out the best they can. Okay, so the last one on my list today, and arguably the most important, would be homes with structural issues. Now, this can be a tough one, especially if it's related to the foundation. How can you tell? It's underground and you can't see it. There is some telltale signs that you have structural issues in a home. And if you have a good home inspector, I hope they're going to find them so you don't have to deal with this nightmare. Some of the things you want to look for when you're buying a home that you think might have structural issues is look for things like sagging doors. So doors that don't close properly, when you open up a door and it just swings all the way open. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes this can be just from poor adjustment or a poor installation of the door, but these are all telltale signs. When you see cracks on the exterior of the home in the stucco or on the siding, or you see cracks on the interior of the plaster or the paint or drywall, this could be an indication that things have settled and moved. Another thing to look at is your windows. Have a look. Do the windows open and close nicely? Do they swing out and swing in properly? These are all things that you can do as just kind of a real quick test to see if there's issues with the home. If you can see the foundation wall, you want to go around and do a 360 of the building and see if there's any significant cracks. Now, again, foundations and concrete does have the tendency to crack over time because you have expansion and contraction in the hot and cold months. But if you've got a big, huge crack that you can stick a quarter in, that's a problem. And it needs to be looked at because not only is it an indication of structural issues, but it can also lead to water intrusion if there's a basement or a crawl space. So you've toured around the house, you've looked at the foundation, but there's also your attic, your truss system, and your flooring system. Now, most of the time, those things are covered by drywall, at least your flooring system, so you're not going to be able to have a look at your floor joists, but the attic is a great spot to have a look and see if there's any issues. Some of the older homes are going to have hand-cut trusses or hand-cut rafters, so those have been built in place by a carpenter at the time versus more modern and new homes are going to have what they're called engineered trusses. But regardless of whether it's engineered or hand cut, has somebody gone in there and done any modifications to it that have caused issues? Has somebody cut through some rafters when they were doing the roof? Has somebody cut through some webbing to put a big skylight in? These are all things that should be looked at and considered because they could be very expensive structural issues that you'll find out later and be paying out of pocket for. This is where having a trusted and reputable home inspector is non-negotiable. Do not skip this step no matter how competitive the market is, because the last thing you want to do is get into a home that has 10 or even hundreds of thousands of dollars of structural repairs needing to be done. We've gone over the 4 types of homes that I wouldn't even consider looking at. I want to know what your thoughts are. So leave a comment below and let me know about experiences and things that you've had. And don't skip the inspections. Hire somebody that's reputable, look through the property disclosure that the seller provided, and be very educated on what you're getting yourself into so you're not going to make a mistake that's very costly down the road. Thanks for watching. Now you know the drill. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real estate insights and tips. I'll see you on the next one.